Hey everyone, James Lynch here, back with some more UFC 2026 predictions. And in today's video, I'm going to give you my dark horses for every UFC weight class, and we're going to go through each division. And when I say dark horse, I mean a fighter by the end of next year will make some big strides in the weight class and really make an impact in their respective divisions. And I didn't do this video last year. If this is a video you guys like, maybe I'll do this every year, but I thought I'd try something a bit different here. And let's start first in the flyweight division. And someone I think is going to be a bit of a dark horse and make some strides next year is Mitch Raposo. He's coming off a big win earlier last year in 2025, I should say, against Azat Maxim. The thing I like here about Mitch is that he's still relatively young, 27 years old for the weight class, not super known. There was a lot of people who felt like, you know, if he lost his last fight that he'd be released from the UFC. Of course, he had that UFC debut against Andre Lima up a weight class, or was that a catchweight, I should say, ends up losing a split decision there, and then ends up losing another split decision to Sumajari. I think he's finally finding his footing here. He's making a lot of good choices when it comes to training camp and all that. I'm not saying he's going to be like a contender or anything, but I think Mitch Raposo will be someone that makes some strides and possibly even it becomes ranked by the end of 2026. So Mitch Raposo, a dark horse at flyweight, in my opinion, someone to keep an eye on. Okay, let's get to bantamweight. This was another tough one here because there's a couple different ways you could have gone with this one, but I'm going to go with David Martinez. Of course, we got a glimpse of him last year, the Black Spartan, with his win over Rob Font. 13-1 record, 27 years old, again, just before that sort of prime level here. I would say a lot of wins by knockout, 10 total. And that debut against, second UFC fight against Rob Font, very impressive. Rob Font, a durable veteran, someone that, was on a nice win streak. I think prior to that, right, he had the win over Matsumoto. When you look at Martinez, just the one loss, making some good strides here. A lot of finishes here on the regional scene. You like seeing that. And I just think someone that we're not talking enough about right now, he is ranked in the division. Now, I know a lot of people would go with someone like Vinicius Oliveira, but he's fighting in a main event against Mario Batista. I don't think he's really a dark horse if you're getting that main event opportunity here, but I think Martinez is someone we've quietly forgot about in the 135-pound weight class and someone I could see making a lot of strides in 2026. So, David Martinez is going to be my dark horse at bantamweight for this year. And again, you could also go with names like, people would say like maybe Peyton Talbot, but I don't think Peyton Talbot's a dark horse. He just beat Henry Cejudo. So these are kind of the names I'm going with, names that you wouldn't come to the top ahead type thing. So David Martinez at bantamweight. Okay, let's get to featherweight. Kevin Vallejos. A lot of things I like about him. First, the record, 17-1. Second, the age, 24 years old, and just came off a pretty good win in his last fight over Chikaze, getting the second round finish there. I think there's still some room for improvement here. Again, from a 24-year-old, it's easy not to see that. But you look at some of these wins here. Danny Silva was 10-1, Sang-Woo Choi 11-7. He's getting some finishes here, which is good. Entertaining fighter, just the one loss to Jean Silva back in September of 2023. That's not a bad loss to have on the resume. I think I'm liking the strides he's making. And again, the age puts him in a spot where he could do some damage here. Now, featherweight's pretty deep, right? Especially if you look at, we've been sort of going through a bit of a changing of the guard with some, names that really made strides last year, like Steve Garcia, Yusuf Salal. If we even look at the rankings at the time I'm recording this, you've got some pretty heavy competition there at featherweight. Even at the very bottom, you got David Onama, who just headlined a card. You got Dan Ige. So Vallejos is currently ranked number 13. I could see him making some strides in this division. I don't know why Brian Ortega's still at featherweight when he's moving up his next fight, but they got to figure that out. But yeah, I could see him having a big year here. And he is a guy I could see possibly getting in that contender spot here pretty soon if he gets a couple more finishes, depending on who he ends up fighting here. So Vallejos, definitely a dark horse at 145, someone to keep an eye on in 2026. Okay, let's get to lightweight. Fares Ziem, we already got a glimpse of his talent last year. Again, 28 years old, 6'1" with a 75-inch reach. Pretty big guy for the weight class, which is awesome. And that Nazim Sadikov win, that was very impressive. Second round finish there, takes him out. Sadikov, a pretty durable guy overall, goes out there and gets the finish. Also beat Mike Davis in the fight previously. Mike Davis had a lot of hype at 11-2. We're starting to see a ramp up in competition for him. And even if you go back a couple of years ago, Jai Herbert, that was a good win. Just the one loss there to Terrence McKinney. He's looked pretty damn good. And I know it's been a couple of years, right? Remember there was that situation where it looked like he might have been cut back in, I think it was 2019, but he's really found his footing. Like some of the improvements he's made, they keep going back to France. And so he's someone they'll probably use for those cards as well. But I like the age here at 28. I think he's coming into his prime right now. I like the overall skill set. You look at a lot of knockouts, but he's got a lot of submissions as well. Can also win by decision. I think Ziem's going to have a big 2026, and he could be another guy that we could see in that contender spot by the end of the year if he keeps improving the way he is. Fares Ziem, definitely going to be Ziem, definitely going to be someone to keep an eye on at lightweight in 2026. Okay, let's get to welterweight. Now, this one was a bit tougher. I went with a bit of an older guy, but Yaroslav Amosov. So we saw how good he looked in that UFC debut against Neil Magny. He's 32, but I do think we're not talking enough about this guy when we look at the overall record, right? He's 29-1. A lot of nice wins here, both by submission and by knockout. I know the competition's certainly going to ramp up from Neil Magny, but I think he could do some damage at welterweight. You know, you look at, again, another division that's going through a bit of a changing of the guard right now. Gone are guys like, Usman, I think, will be retired by the end of this year. You've got, Gilbert Burns, Wonder Boy, Colby Covington. I think Covington's almost done. Jeff Neal's, lost a few here. We're seeing a bit of a transition, and I think Amosov could be part of that as we see him get booked here hopefully soon. It's good to see the UFC bring him over from Bellator. I really liked what he did over there in Bellator, but I think he's a guy that we're not talking about enough as someone who could do some damage at 170 this year. And again, very deep division. You talk about some of the names at the top. It is a killer's row at the top there, starting with champion Islam Makhachev and then working our way down. But I think Amosov's a guy that could, sneak his way up here pretty soon and do some damage. So I'm going to go Yaroslav Amosov as my dark horse at 170. I think he could definitely do some damage this year. Okay, let's get to middleweight. This guy got a bit of hype last year, but I think, again, it's worth noting that Goddard is just 23 years old, 6'4" with an 81-inch reach, 8 wins by knockout. Now, the big thing with me is I need to see some better opposition here, right? He fought Treston Vines in his last fight. Treston Vines, 10-3 record, but if you look at who Treston's fought on the regional scene, not exactly the best opposition. I like the fact that he's finishing guys, but I think this year will be a good test for him. Pulayev right here, very good opponent here at UFC 324. If he passes that test, I would like to see him get a ranked opponent this year. The thing I really liked though was the age, and I think he's a guy that, again, entertaining, exciting. The UFC seems to be behind him. He was, very active last year, right? He had 3 fights last year, so the UFC likes him. I could see him making some big strides at middleweight right now, and I think he could emerge as a sort of a guy to keep an eye on at 185. So Goddard has got to be my dark horse at the 185-pound division. All right, let's move our way up to 205. 205 is a little bit difficult because there aren't a lot of young fighters in that weight class that I think could do a lot of damage. But to me, Bogdan Guskov, he's coming off that draw with Jan Blachowicz, but he almost finished Jan in that last fight, and I was actually pretty impressed. The fight previously got the win over Krylov, just had that one loss in his debut to Volkan Ozdemir, but I think he's learned a lot since then. The only thing, kind of like with Goder, same thing, hasn't fought the best opposition here. Zach Paugo not in the UFC, Ryan Spann is a heavyweight, Eli Kana not doing too much, Krylov's on a losing streak. But I like the fact, 33 years old, 6'3" with a 76-inch reach. I think he's a guy that could definitely make some strides this year. Same thing. I think this is a division where we are seeing some guys on the come up here. I think Guskov's going to have a big 2026. I think it just matters on who he's going to get matched up with. But I think, even though he lost the fight, if he didn't gas out, if he can work on his cardio and he can, go all 3 rounds at a better pace, because I think cardio is fixable, I think he can be an absolute threat at 205. Guskov's going to be my pick for dark horse at 205. I think he makes a lot of big moves here in 2026. Okay, let's get to heavyweight, and this one's a total guess, but if you watch my fights to make video, you probably already know where I'm going with this at heavyweight, because let's be honest, outside the top 5 at heavyweight, there's not a lot going on, but I'm going Gable Stevenson. 2-0 record. I'm really getting ahead here. He's 25 years old, but I think the UFC is going to sign him this year, and I think he's going to make an immediate impact because heavyweight, if you look at the division right now, right, outside of this top 6, we'll say, because I think Almeida's pretty good. You go below this, Spivak, Lewis, Delija, Tybura, Gaziv, Tuivasa, Parkin, Walker, Teixeira. It's not very strong. This heavyweight division is one of the worst it's been in years outside of this top 6, I would say. Why wouldn't the UFC want to sign Gable at this point? I think he'll get on Contender Series, win a fight or 2, and then I could see him making his debut this year. And I think he will be a guy that will do some damage here because, again, with that wrestling, there are guys right now I think he could beat at heavyweight just with the wrestling alone. His stand-up's coming a long way. He's at a good training camp. There's a lot of hype behind him. Again, he's not fighting the best opposition, but the fact that he's knocking these guys out and he's got the wrestling to boot, that's going to be a dangerous combination for heavyweight right now. So he's going to be a dark horse for me for the simple fact that I just don't think heavyweight's that strong, and I just don't see anyone else here that's going to make much noise in this division. You got a lot of guys here that are older. I think Stevenson, the right age, and a guy that could certainly do some damage there. So Gable Stevenson is going to be my dark horse at heavyweight, and we'll see how that ages at the end of next year. So let me know in the comments, what are some of your dark horses? Were there any I missed? I'm sure there was, but I just went off the list I could think of. Let me know your dark horses in every weight class. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.